immemorial, women have birthed life, shaped character, and by extension, influenced the society. Moremi of Ife, Emotan of Benin, Queen Aminat of Zaria, all women of influence and power.
Whether it's before election, after election.
How ironical. Women being so powerful, yet have few grounds in decision making.
They see you as a wife, and I see you as a wife to a man.
We are talking women in politics.
A woman will be bold enough to stand up and say, I want to become president of Nigeria.
Only on Core TV News.
It's day 303, 62 more days to go before the end of the year. And countdown, we are doing right here to the 2015 general elections. Many have asked the question, how important is this to the history of Nigeria? How important is this to the average Nigerian on the street? Well, it's the same question I ask myself every other day. But I know that everything rises and falls on leadership, and that's why you and I must take proactive steps to be engaged actively in who leads Nigeria come 2015. Well, let's quickly find out what the top stories are today on some of Nigerian newspapers. I am joined already here in our live studio in Lagos by a political affairs analyst, FEMI ENOFE. Good morning, FEMI. Thank you for finding time to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's start with the Nation newspaper. The top story here, scores die as Boko Haram seizes barracks, prison. And the writer, troops, Mubi residents flee. Air Force pounds insurgents. And moving away from there now to the front page picture on the Nation this morning. It's Odige Oyegun reading his address yesterday. With aim from the left are Kwankwaso, Nda Zaya, General Buhari, and Owele Okorocha. Well, I hope that that picture pops up on your screen any moment from now. But there's an excerpt here that says, I have embraced the APC platform as a veritable instrument for genuine change and enduring national development. Nigerians yearn for true change and a promise of a brighter tomorrow. And I believe that's coming from who they now call the new kid in the building, the new boy in the block. You'll find out all of that details, an excerpt of his picture here, Tambuwal holding the broom yesterday. Details of that story on page 4 of the Nation. Or your PDP leaders reject Ladoja. I can't live for uncertainty. That's on page 7 of the Nation. And Synagogue, Corona gets manifest on page 64. Naira rain on Super Falcons to wait. Oh, Naira rain on Super Falcons to wait. That's on page 49. And CBN stops banks forex for BDCs, page 63 of the Nation. Femi, let's start with the top one here, the big story here. Scores die as Boko Haram seizes barracks, prison. We just spoke with our correspondent in Adamawa, who actually confirmed that indeed there is a level of fear amongst the people in that region. Does it not baffle you that all of these are still taking place at a time where the federal government claims there is a ceasefire deal between the FG and the Boko Haram sect?
Isn't it comical that the Nigerian military came up with an argument for ceasefire at the time where they were having an upper hand in the campaign against insurgency? It leaves a lot of questions that needs to be answered. And added to that, it also opens up the underbelly of the quality of the Nigerian army that we have. Because in the absence of intelligence, all things are possible. Because if the military had sufficient intelligence on the intentions and the working of the insurgents, it would have been absolutely impossible for even that effort to have been made. But the absence of intelligence has given birth to all this kind of... And moreover, we must look at the history of our military. Those who today preside over the affairs of the military, at what point did they become officers in the military? At what point? It was... Most of these people are people who got into the military during the era where the military was in governance in this country. And in all the period that they were in governance, they destroyed every institution under heaven, every. They destroyed the police, they destroyed the army, they destroyed the civil service, they destroyed everything. And unfortunately, they are the ones who are now the arrowheads of democracy. It's unlaughable. So that's what we have. You have a military who is going for a ceasefire and an insurgency that is attacking the barracks.
In your opinion, do you think that possibly the federal government is speaking with the wrong sect, or what are your feelings along this line?
The thing is this. The federal government, as we have today, is presiding over a society that the structures are absolutely faulty, that are unfounded. I pity the president because he has to, whether he likes it or not, these are the tools that he has to work with. He has to find a way to work with the military structure that he has. And I make bold to say that since the Civil War, every person that ascended office as head of state under the military made conscious effort to destroy the military.
Why did they do that?
Because they were more interested in self-preservation in office than in ensuring strong institutions.
But that doesn't make any logical sense. Self-preservation would have been in the Nigerian military.
No, you see, the thing is, you also need to understand that there were career military officers in the military. They were political military officers, and they always had to look over each other's shoulder. You never know when the coup was going to pop up or when the counter coup was going to show. And to make sure that there were no coups and there were no counter coups, the military deliberately, those who were in leadership, deliberately weakened the military for their own self-survival.
Okay. Let's move away quickly from there to find out other stories on the Guardian newspaper today. Government allays fears over fall in oil price, assures citizens of other sources of revenues. Interesting story there on the front page of the Guardian. Well, there are all smiles. The front page picture of the Guardian shows President Goodluck Jonathan as well as the Vice President in a group photograph with the champions, the Super Eagles, and officials during the presentation of the African Women Football Tournament Champions Trophy to the leader at the presidential villa. That was yesterday. Global Donor Agency indicts Nigeria for misuse of vaccine funds, suspends cash-based support, freezes account, asks AFCC to probe Minister of Health. Others, and country agrees to refund $2.2 million. Well, let's quickly take all the stories before FEMI begins to analyze these issues. Corona Court gets names of lodgers at synagogue's collapsed building. That's on page 5. Over 100 feared killed in Sri Lanka landslide. Page 24. And controversial 30,000 polling units and fears for 2015 elections is on page 89 of The Guardian. Tambuwa at APC convention pledges to aid nation's growth. That's on page 4. And Jonathan collects nomination form today. Page 7 of The Guardian. Zambian President Sattar dies. Court becomes Africa's first white leader in 20 years. Interesting story on page 10. I'm wondering, Sarah, why the pictures of these papers are not actually on screen right now. But let's start with this issue of a global donor agency indicting Nigeria for misuse of vaccine funds. Would you see that taking corruption to a totally global dimension this time around?
I'm a Nigerian, and I've become so inundated with all of these kind of stories. Nigeria has no image to protect anymore in the international community. And it's a country of, like Fela would say, chop and claim out. Everybody just looking for an opportunity to steal as much as he can. And it's shameful because when people donate out of their sweat for the well-being of other people, and somebody says because he's in position to ensure that those resources are managed, puts them in his private pocket. I don't know why anybody ought to urge the EFCC. These persons, by now, should have been fished out and made to account for whatever has happened to the money. But I can assure you of one fact. They'll play politics with it. And before you know it, it's probably when the hit comes from the PDP, he goes to the APC, he's celebrated as a hero. Or if he's APC, he goes to the PDP, celebrated as a hero. That's what we have.
What do you think all of this portend for Nigeria in the eyes of the global community?
The global community, for me, doesn't matter. It's how do we see our country. It's the challenge of the Nigerian, not the challenge of the British, not the challenge of the American. The Nigerian must look at itself or look at himself or herself straight in the eyes, look in the mirror and ask, what kind of person do I want to present myself as? The average Nigerian must be up in arms against the kind of nonsense that is happening. I don't see, there's a class of struggle going on. There's a conspiracy against the poor. Whether we like it, whether it's APC, whether it's PDP, whether it's a conspiracy of the rich against the poor. It's the oppressor against the oppressed. The lot of the workers across the country are not any better. I challenge any governor. They are not any better. The poor are absolutely poor and abjectly poor.
And you put all of this blame solely at the doorstep of leadership?
It is leadership that gives the inspiration. It's leadership that gives the direction. But unfortunately for us, as a followership, we have not made up our mind on the quality of leadership that we want. And so we sit down at the end of each 4 years, charlatans come aboard in the name of one political party or the other, we celebrate them. And then they find themselves in office and they do whatever they want to do. And they walk away.
Some have also put that blame on the economic status of the average Nigerian. For instance, if you're going to feed me, then what is the use of a fingerprint, for crying out loud? If I have not been able to feed my family and I see someone who is coming with stuffs, what they now term as stomach infrastructure.
No, but who creates the economic landmark? Today, what we have is people are emerging on platform of political parties to contest for offices. Nobody's asking, what economic plans do you have for this country? I have not seen one presidential aspirant who has come up to say, this is how I intend to govern Nigeria in the next 4 years. These are my economic blueprints for this country. Not one. Not one. Not one. The only person who has had the courage to deliver a blueprint and say, this is what I want to do with governance has been Atiku Abubakar. I'm not a fan of his. But he's the only one who has been able to put his thought on paper and say, this is the quality of governance I want to give to Nigeria. The whole lot of them are talking about Jonathan being corrupt, and they are not any better. It's just a gang of thieves singing amongst themselves. And then we, at the receiving end, are clustering, and then we are queuing behind them.
Let's quickly touch on this story. It's on page 89 of The Guardian. Controversial 30,000 polling units and fears for 2015 elections. Why do you think that quite a number of Nigerians are very, very edgy and edgy when they hear additional polling units? Where's the fear coming from?
It's nonsensical.
How do you mean?
You can have 100,000 additional polling units. It doesn't bother me. I'm a citizen of this country. It's the same political class that are dividing this country. They are the ones who are preaching ethnicism. They are the ones who are preaching regional politics. They are the ones who are talking about polling units being enough or being too much. For me, what is important to me is an opportunity to put my prints on paper on election day and vote my choice. That's what's important to me. If the more polling units will get more people to vote on election day, the better for this country. But those who are edgy because they think regional interests, how does it favor them? If you put more additional polling units in their villages, they won't complain. But that's the truth. It's all selfish. It's all narrow. It's all parochial. And it's about time Nigerians begin to deal with issues as issues. We must forget about the persons behind these arguments.
But what about the issue of trust? Because you must also consider the experiences that people have had in the past.
Look, I'm well over 40. I've spent many years of my life in this country. And in all of my existence, if I were to talk about the kind of persons that I would call leader, I'll be talking in the 70s and probably the early 80s. Since then, yes, I've not had a leader in this country. I've not. There's nobody inspires me. I wake up every morning, and you see, the interesting thing is that we are encouraged to read American books, read European books for inspiration. Because we don't have anybody in this country to point out and say, this person is the one who is driving my stake. It's sad. And I look back and I look at my children, and I really, my heart aches because we're in trouble. We are in serious trouble. That's why you can have a Boko Haram and nobody can say anything about it. That's why you can have a Niger Delta uprising and nobody can query it. That's why, and all of these are pockets of dissatisfaction. And people will continue to protest. And I pray not violently. Because like they say, if you make peaceful change impossible, then you are actually canvassing violent change. And that's what they are doing.
But are there no other alternatives to solving our problems in Nigeria? Some have traced it down to the value system, because many are even of the opinion that leadership is simply a reflection of what is tenable at the family level, even in Nigeria.
Sorry, sir, let me butt in. I'm sorry to brought it, but the truth is this. I'll ask, what quality of followership do you expect in the society that has suffered all kinds and all manners of balkanization? We have not had. Do you know, I grew up with a culture of, do you know who I am? That impunity. A man who is a military officer, as a captain, he drives to the middle of the street, a policeman stops him, he gets out of his car, slaps the policeman, and drives away. That's the culture I grew up under. And these are the foundations that have been created. And so now people steal brazenly, and they spend it in your face. They drive exotic vehicles, they have no means of livelihood. They build mansions, they can't explain how they earned. Impunity all over the place. And that's what the society is copying. And so the only way, look, let me give you an example. I coordinated the fuel subsidy protest in Ikorodu. And amongst those who were marching with me, were demanding from me monies that they assumed had come from the headquarters of the NLC. But I never had to meet anybody at the NLC. I was particularly compelled to hit the street because I felt that the people had suffered enough. But those on whose behalf I was on the street saw me as somebody who should be a conduit pipe with take and milk. So that is the reality that we, over the years, have cultivated for ourselves. And it's about time we begin to cultivate new values, cultivate new thought patterns.
How do we make that happen?
The first thing we must do is that I'm not the only one who is bitter in this country. But we must begin to find a cluster of people who are dissatisfied with the status quo. And they begin to find a way to address new ways of doing things in this country. We have abundance of them. And again, you see, that's a big challenge. You cannot become a presidential aspirant or a candidate or an aspirant on the platform of the PDP because you need 22 million. You cannot become an aspirant on the platform of the APC because you need 27 million. And what is the average income of the Nigerian worker? You have a society where governors say they can't pay 18,000 naira minimum wage. And then you are producing presidential candidates at 22 million, 27 million. How many years will it take somebody who is a civil servant to save 27 million?
You're saying our parties are not even, do not have the systems to bring the right people?
We don't have political parties, we have gangs. I'll say this to their faces. We have a clique who are insistent on holding us in servitude. Whether you call it the APC, the ABGA, the PD, and unfortunately the Labour Party also.
Which you are a part of, I believe.
And I have no regrets.
You're a card-carrying member
of the Labour
Party. I have no regrets
opening my mouth to say the Labour Party is not any exception because it has a disgraceful leadership that is working hand in glove with the same court of criminals.
We'll get there, but there are also issues of independent candidature. Do you see that as an alternative solution to all of these party problems?
It's a booby trap.
How do you mean?
I'll tell you. For you to contest as a local government chairman in this country, you need an average in the minimum 200 to 300 million naira. You are not spending on the electorate. You are not spending on your campaign. There are people who sit down in their houses and say they are chieftains in the locality. They have area boys at their command. If you don't go to see them, you can't even do your campaign. The people are not as, these are everyday realities. And so you want to be a governor. There are so many issues we must deal with in this country. And I know that we must get revolutionary. I'm not saying carry guns. We must get revolutionary in our thinking. We must get revolutionary in our attitude to governance. We must get revolutionary in our attitude to our economics.
That's all right. Let's find out other stories trending on the newspapers today. We'll go into the Punch now. The Punch newspaper. Adamawa on fire. Boko Haram sacks police station, prison. Sect attempts take over of army barracks. And banks move cash to Yola. Government imposes curfew. You get details of all of those stories on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Jonathan gets 100 million naira donation to buy PDP farm. That's on page 8. APC holds convention, vows to sweep out the PDP. That's on page 3. President blames NFF crisis for Eagles' poor performance. Page 75 of the Punch. Tamboa Jonathan calls emergency PDP meeting. You can't dictate to us, reps replied PDP. That's on page 2. Health of boy attacked by dogs. worsens. You get details of that on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch. Femi, there are politicians coming up now with ambitions. But the new twist to all these political calculations is that there are also groups, you know, in the name of supporting groups who come up to donate money to buy nomination forms. Of course, they might also be thinking about, because you made mention of what average Nigerian can afford 22 million naira, 27.5 million naira. But now there are groups who are coming up. You overheard the special advisor to the president yesterday rolling out the names of these groups and the amount of money that they have donated to Mr. President. What are your thoughts along this new development?
I would want to be informed on what inspires those people who made the donations. That's, for me, that's what is fundamental. First, I want to congratulate President Jonathan for having the courage to even publish the names of the donors. But I want to challenge those who made those donations. What motivated those donations? Is it the fantastic quality of governance or the fantastic quality of lives that they presently have? Poverty is on the incline. And so I do not know. Whatever they did, whoever did what, they did for reasons best known to them.
But it sure means that there are certain people who are satisfied with the present state of governance in Nigeria.
Unfortunately so. And that, like I said, there's a penny class war. There are people who belong to a class. A man who has not eaten in 2 days will not be donating any money to anybody's political ambition. And that's the class I belong to. To struggle to hold head over water. That's the class I belong to. And I cannot spend 1,000 naira for anybody's political ambition as of today, because I don't have it.
Well, you recall also that the Transformation Ambassador, what do they call it now, the TAN group, also have collected millions of signatures who are compelling Mr. President to run for a second term.
And who constitute the transformation agenda of Nigeria. It's a gang. You know what? If I sit down and I ponder, I tell myself we're in trouble in this country. We are in serious trouble. This conspiracy is so sophisticated. The ordinary Nigerian is looking at this superficially, but it's deeper than all of that. There's a gang, there's a conspiracy ongoing. Look, I tell you candidly, there is no difference between the PDP and the APC, and I say it with all emphasis. It's a gang, it's the same gang. When they meet in their private, assemblies, they celebrate. They have fun. They mock at us.
So you believe that the people are playing the fool here?
The people are the fools here. They are not just playing it, they are acting it. And it's about time we got wiser. It's time to confront this gang. And until we do that, we are going nowhere.
Let's quickly touch on the final point of call now. I have the Vanguard here. Residents flee Mubi as insurgents take over. The riders, many feared, killed as Boko Haram attacks other towns. My daughter, other relatives missing. That's not me, it's in Yako's aid. Speaking tough on the front page of the Vanguard. Come over to Mubi and help us. Ebia tells military. Military has already down to, so in case you don't know, there's a ceasefire ongoing. But of course, the military is also saying that that doesn't mean that they will stand and watch innocent lives killed. Synagogue Corona threatens to arrest Joshua if he fails to testify. That's on page 10. 80% of Nigeria's pipeline network has collapsed. That's what the federal government is saying. And you can get details of that on page 9. Now look at the picture on the front page of the Vanguard. Can we get that? No road is the rider here. Tankers, other articulated vehicles take over mile 2 end of the Apapa Oshodi Expressway in Lagos. Now, this is what they call bumper to bumper. This is indeed very, very terrible. Well, white man rules Zambia as President Michael Sata dies. That's on page 56. And Jonathan picks nomination form today. Asks court to dismiss suit challenging his eligibility. That's on page 8 of the Vanguard. Now, where do we start from? There are lots of issues to talk about. Lots of stories evolving from the papers. But it's amazing to know that the eligibility of Mr. President, his eligibility to contest is still in court at this time. Do you see that having any impact whatsoever on his nomination and, of course, its participation in the 2015 general elections?
You know, my simple answer would be, let the president deal with his headache. The people that went to court to challenge his eligibility. Let them also deal with their issues. For all I care, whether the president is eligible or not eligible is of no primary concern to the Nigerian. It is the survival of the average Nigerian that is of primary concern to us. And those are the issues. And all of these are diversionary. Look, you just look at the picture on the front page of the Vanguard. Why should we transport fuel all over the country on trucks? Those are moving bombs. If any one of them would explode in the middle of the traffic in Lagos, I tell you, thousands of lives would be wasted. We deliberately kill the railway system. People kill the railway. They are around. We see them. They flaunt wealth. They flaunt power. Nobody's asked questions. People kill the airways. They are around. They own airlines now, and they are succeeding our private airline owners. Nobody's asking questions. Nigerian National Shipping Line. People killed it. Today, they are in the marine business, and they are doing well, and nobody's asking. Nitel, people killed it. They are around, they are living with us, nobody's asking questions. The truth is, when you deliberately decimate institutions, when you frustrate the normalcy that people take for granted everywhere else in the world, you create problems that haunt you even until after your death.
The question has always been, how do you expect the Nigerian people to take up this challenge actively when they have their own economic challenge that they are dealing with?
You see, the economic challenges will never go away. Matter of fact, it will get worse if they don't deal with what is looking at them. It will get worse by the day. That's why I get amazed when I see rallies and I see young men clustered all over the places.
But you are not in any way suggesting a violent revolution in Nigeria.
For me, there's a need for massive mobilization for consciousness on what is actually going on in our environment. The younger people need to be able to think. The quality of education we are getting, we must do a review of. People need to be able to look at what is right. And I hang around young people a lot these days, and I see what they do with their time. I never had that privilege, because growing as a young man, it was how many novels you read during the holiday that we prided ourselves in.
Okay.
But today, it's how many people you have on Facebook and on Twitter following you that makes you
trendy,
brave of the moment. You know, and so that's our reality.
Femi ENOFE, thank you very much for joining us today on the Dailies, political affairs analyst, and no doubt I enjoyed speaking with you. I hope that you find time to visit us more often on Core TV News.
I'll try so hard.
Please do. It's so the rave of the moment now, featuring over 32 states of Nigeria, and there's active participation, especially as we begin to focus on political education of the Nigerian people.
That's great.
Thank you very much for joining us. We'd love to hear from you on the show today. The phone lines will be coming up any moment from now, but we'll take a break now. And when we come back, we'll be discussing internal democracy between consensus and primary elections. I am Nifemi Okuntowe. Don't go away.
Nigerians are expected to seek out the best words to describe the activity. The Yoruba Unity Forum is conducted.
Be the first to know. From the north, south, east, west, and around Africa.
Presidential
we break the news. Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are Core TV News.
Welcome to Core TV Primetime
News, a 24-hour news station.